everyone. What is happening? And welcome to 5 Star Conversations in the Sun City. I am your host, Michelle M. Trejalis, and I have an incredible guest today. Super excited to talk with him. His name is Miguel Moya, and he is an educator and nonprofit leader dedicated to expanding educational opportunity and developing leadership pathways for historically disadvantaged communities. Now, he is the co-founder and president of the El Paso Leadership Network, a nonprofit committed to strengthening El Paso by investing in education, civic engagement, and leadership development for local residents. Miguel is a Teach for America alum and began his career teaching in under-resourced classrooms, an experience that continues to shape his deep commitment to equity, access, and community-centered solutions. His academic background includes a bachelor's degree from Columbia University, a master's degree from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and recognition as a Fulbright Program scholar. Through his work, Miguel focuses on building inclusive educational pathways and developing leaders who are equipped not only to succeed individually, but to strengthen their communities as a whole. And you know that's what we are all about here on 5 Star Conversations. His leadership reflects the belief that education is a cornerstone of long-term community health, resilience, and opportunity. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Mr. Miguel Moya. Hi.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the intro.
Yes, thank you so much. I am so excited to speak with you because I had the chance I met you in your element. You know, when you were bringing the community together, and that was the first time I had the opportunity to meet you, and that was at the El Paso Leadership Network. It was a workshop that you had put together,
hmm
and it was absolutely bringing the community together. It was, you know, you had a panel on civic engagement. You had a panel on workforce development, I believe, and education. That was such a cool experience. And the way that you created that opportunity for people to get not only just be there and listen, but to actually bring their ideas forward is so fantastic. But before we,
Thank you.
kind of get into, you're welcome, you're welcome. Before we really get into like how that experience went, I would love for you to, for people who may be meeting you for the first time, can you share what led you into education and eventually into this nonprofit leadership here in El Paso?
Of course. And again, really excited to be here and to have this conversation with you. Thank you for giving me this platform. And well, just to share a little more context about myself, I am from El Paso, Texas, but I grew up in Juarez, Chihuahua for the first 10 years of my life. I'm a first generation college graduate from a low income immigrant family. And that identity has deeply influenced my career trajectory. When I was in college, I thought it was super necessary for me to create some kind of organization where I could give back to my community of El Paso, which gave me all the tools that I got in order to succeed academically and be able to go to college. So when I was a junior, I decided to get a couple of my friends together to start a nonprofit organization called El Paso Leadership Network. At first, we focused on creating a mentorship program for high school students through which we paired a college student with a high school student, and we guided them through the college and scholarship application process.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran that program for about 4 years with some success. We had more than 20 mentees in our
Mm-hmm.
program, and many of them got into their dream schools and got really good scholarships to finance their education. And I would say that was my first big experience in the field of education, and it inspired me to continue to pursue that path. So right
Mm-hmm.
after college, it felt like a natural next step to join Teach for America, where I taught for 2 years in a low income immigrant community, very similar to the one of El Paso where I grew up in. But this was in Miami, Florida, and then from there I went to grad school because I noticed that I could make a lot of changes as a teacher, and also as a nonprofit leader, directly impacting people's lives. But I
Yeah.
also wanted to learn the tools to make systemic changes in the long run so that people in disadvantaged communities could have access to all the resources necessary, not just to succeed academically, but also to succeed in their careers and attain a
Mm-hmm.
high quality of life. So uh, that's essentially why I decided to pursue a career in education, and we'll see where my path takes me next.
Well, you already have such a, a colored, career and success. Especially, sounds like you start, your first mission with the El Paso Leadership Network was to help students with scholarships. That's what you said, right?
Mhm,
And to get into the schools that they really want to get into. And I mean, you've got your bachelor's from Columbia, your master's degree from Harvard Graduate School of Education. Like, wow, Fulbright program. So, you definitely were helping people through a path that you must have learned, or you must have figured something out at an early stage. Going from having your bachelor's degree and then deciding to get your master's degree, and I think this is an important conversation, not just for high school students even, but this is inspiring to me. I'm a non-traditional student.
mhm,
I'm going to UTEP. I am taking this semester off so that I can work and take a little time to build my media business. But I'm like, how do we tap into these scholarships? I mean, I mean that that's a powerful opportunity to help
mhm,
people so that they can focus on their education, and also to get into the schools that are going to be best for them. So by your doing that for yourself, is that what motivated you to say, hey, you know what? I'm learning how to do this. It looks like I'm looking around me, and a lot of people don't understand that it really could be, I don't want to say easy, but it really is some steps that people aren't taking. Let me help them. Is that kind of where that came from?
mhm. Well, I will say that I was very lucky and privileged to attain the scholarships, which enabled me to get not just a bachelor's degree, but also a master's degree. When I was a senior in high school, I received the Gates Millennium Scholarship, which essentially paid for all of my college and for my master's degree. So, uh, with
Wow.
yeah, with that opportunity, I felt like I had a lot of responsibility to make the best of my opportunities, but I
Yes.
also somewhat felt like I also had to give back to my communities because not all students, even if they are smart and dedicated, get access to these kinds of scholarships. So I just wanted to build a program that helped students who were dedicated to succeeding, especially if they came from a first generation and low income background, to get access to scholarships like Gates Millennium and similar. So I think access is really important.
Yes, sir.
There's not enough scholarships out there for people to finance their education completely, and
Yeah.
very few are lucky to get full rights to study in college. So I think access to capital is really important, and for that reason, not only did El Paso Leadership Network have a mentorship program, but we actually also ran a small scholarship program for
Oh, great.
uh, the duration of the mentorship program. We gave away about $3,000 in scholarships to university students who have some have already graduated and some are still in college. But I feel like not only is information important, but direct access to scholarships and capital in general, I think is foundational for people to succeed in their academic and professional pursuits as well.
I absolutely agree and understand that tremendously. I mean, me moving back here to El Paso, taking care of my mom, and being able to stay with her has helped me to be able to do that. So I have to admit my privilege too. Because not everybody has that opportunity. So that is a privilege, and it's one that also makes me want to give back in that way, because it's like,
Hmm.
when we, to whom much is given, much is required. And especially someone like you who really does care about community health and about education and understanding how that impacts a community. And that was one of the very interesting uh, things that I found about the El Paso Leadership Network, and surprising, because honestly I didn't know what to exactly expect when I went, which is a fun thing, because I saw that there I saw Annalisa Cordova from Progress 321. I'm very active with
Hmm.
Progress 321, and I have been for the past 3 to 4 years, and that organization has been incredible. And that's also under the umbrella of the community El Paso Community Foundation. And the way that the equity, the inclusion, that nonprofit organization has afforded me has been very helpful, because I just moved back here to El Paso in 2019. So I saw that she was speaking there. So that's one person. I also saw that Ben Hokinson and Dr. Nicole Aguilar was speaking there. Of course, she unfortunately, I think she was sick, if she wasn't able to make it. But Ben Hokinson was there, and this past semester I went to UTEP, and I was one of their first students in the entrepreneurial mindset micro credential that they had created. So I saw all of those people that I look up to that, have opened opportunities for me. So I said, okay, so let me check out this El Paso Leadership Network. What surprised me, Miguel, and I would love for you to speak more into a little bit, was the I wasn't expecting for you to have provided so much information about El Paso's, like the numbers, the data of
Hmm.
our engagement. That blew me away, and I was like instantly yes. I think maybe I was expecting, leadership network. Maybe I was just expecting, kind of like some motivational speaking a little bit or something like that. But the numbers that you provided, and the call to action for us to think of ways that we could engage in our community and be more leaders, like your definition of leadership. And I have, let me say this, I have attended so many networking events, so many talks, I mean, I've attended everything, every style of coming together, and your leadership and your network feels different in a positive way. It feels
Hmm.
really intentional. How did you move to that direction and decide, you know what, let's actually, let's put some accountability, let's put some numbers in front of people, and let's really talk about what's actually happening in El Paso? What made you decide to take that direction?
Well, you mentioned a word which I think is crucial, which is intentionality. I didn't want to just host an event where people came to shake hands and listen to some motivational speeches. I've been living in El Paso for about 8 months now, and I have attended other networking events where all you do is listen to a couple of speeches and then maybe make some connections with people surrounding you. But instead, what I wanted to focus on was do an educational event where people felt empowered to do something themselves, uh, grounded in the reality that El Paso lives in. Um, so, so
That's a good one right there.
yeah,
That is a good one. Yeah, elaborate, please. That's beautiful.
so I wanted to make sure that any conversations that took place during that event were based on actual data of how our city stands when it comes to civic engagement and
Mm,
economic development. So I researched two main data sets that are publicly available. One is
okay.
the quality of life survey that was administered in El Paso, primarily through the El Paso Community Foundation. And then
Quality
second,
of life survey.
mhm, yes,
Okay.
that pointed to a lot of civic and economic data. And then I
Mm,
also looked at economics data from the city of El Paso itself. This is on
okay.
their Department of Economic Development's website. And
Okay.
by looking at this data, what I was trying to do was identify problems that the city is trying to cope with that may impact its long-term development and well-being. So
Beautiful.
a couple of
Beautiful.
highlights from that data was one that our community is simply not as civically engaged as it could be. Many people don't vote. Many people don't
Mm-hmm.
have trust in institutions. Many people don't volunteer for nonprofit causes or for political causes. So I wanted to bring that to the table and ask panelists, hey, you are in a position of power and you have engaged with people for many years. So, how do you think we can help people engage more with the community of El Paso? Um, on the other hand, looking at economic data, a lot of people, more than 50% surveyed, indicate that it's difficult for them to make ends meet in our city.
Mm,
Uh, we also have below average um, income rates as opposed to like other cities. And at the same time, we have a lower cost of living, but uh, we have a lot of people who leave El Paso seeking opportunities elsewhere, whether
mm-hmm.
it's education or professional opportunities. So uh, I think a lot of the questions that took place, not just through the panels, but also through an activity that we did after the panels, uh, we're focused on looking at this data, identifying problems, and thinking about solutions that we could implement ourselves as leaders. Because
Mm.
we do have responsibility to make our community better. And I just want to empower those around me to realize their own potential for impact and actually put it into practice.
Man, that is so true. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast because I'm like, hey, let's have the real conversations, um,
Mm-hmm.
and not just have conversations, but let's connect with real people like you who are here to really do the work and are creating these spaces to where we can actually create solutions and not just talk about things or not just glamour over glamorize everything because I feel like we can tend to have a problem with that, unfortunately. The beautiful thing about El Paso and our region is that it is so beautiful. The people are beautiful, the landscapes are beautiful, the people are brilliant. We're talented. I mean, and we have the best of several different worlds and several different communities, tribal America. We do have so much. And how do we steward it properly? That in and to where there's equity, it's equitable for everyone. That is, I feel like, the challenge. So
Mm-hmm.
with your deep educational knowledge and from that perspective of from getting being at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and now starting this nonprofit and things to that nature, what do you feel like we need here in El Paso? Um, do you have any ideas as to where do we go from here? I know that at our event, you had a really beautiful, engaging session and workshop there at at the later part of the event, where you had put labels of different, different, I guess, markets, or different elements of community, like healthcare and education, technology, what makes a growing city. And everyone that was there, I say there was probably what 25, 30 people there at that point. Was that, would you say that's about right, right? And you had us all kind of go around and write our ideas together and work together to say, hey, how can we engage, with each other in these areas? After that workshop, have you come up with something? Have you put it together and made a plan, Miguel? We're counting it now.
Yeah, I have been thinking a lot about the takeaways from that event, and I've been drafting some ideas as to how we can improve our community, and also looking back at the data, how we can make sure that our community is more engaged and how economic development is equitable for folks, especially considering that,
Mm-hmm.
again, many people report they barely make ends meet. About one in every five El Pasoans live below the poverty threshold. So
Mm-hmm.
these are very key issues that need to be addressed. And honestly, I think that the foundation as to how we approach these issues needs to be discussed more thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
because something that I have felt is that whenever I come into conversations about how to make El Paso better, a lot of it is centered on just economic growth and economic development. Like, oh, we need more business, we need more entertainment, we need more reasons for people to come to El Paso, right? And I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like
Yes.
that may be, a good solution, to increase our local GDP, but at the same time, it's not necessarily impacting the everyday life of El Pasoans, particularly those who are disadvantaged. So, what I believe is that we need to have a perspective which is centered on access to opportunity for all in El Paso, and
Yes.
and that entails uh, redefining how we look at progress. Like, not only should we have economic growth, but everyone should have economic opportunity as
Mm-hmm.
well, right, to succeed themselves. So having said
Yes.
that, I think that starting at the root of the issues, I think, is crucial.
Okay.
So helping people from early stages in their lives, and helping them and supporting them through stages of their journeys is very important. So first, making sure that we have high quality education from kindergarten through 12th grade. I think that's something that's super important, especially
Mm-hmm.
considering how, looking at the data, uh, less than 50% of students across school districts in El Paso are barely hitting proficiency standards on STAR exams. So
Is
that's
that
one
right?
issue. Yeah, no, and this is published again in the data that I mentioned, the quality of life
Yes.
survey and the economic data
Wow.
from the city. So that's one key issue. How are we helping children succeed in the classroom so that they get access to opportunity after they graduate from high school, right? So making
Yes.
sure that students have high quality education, that's a big piece of the puzzle. Um, Another is also making sure that our communities are healthy, and helping
Mm-hmm.
students be healthy throughout their academic journeys and into their career. as well, making sure that we have robust public health programs that ensure
Mm-hmm.
that uh, people just have what they need so that they're not struggling with their health as they try to succeed academically or professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is, making sure that life is affordable for folks, ensuring that there's affordable housing for individuals because housing instability can definitely make it difficult for students and parents to succeed.
Yes, it
So
can.
so I just think that we live in a system that is very complex where there's a lot of pieces that affect the well-being of the citizens who live in El Paso. That's education, that's housing, that's health, that's um, access to just resources in their vicinity, public goods,
Mm-hmm.
public services. I think that uh, just making sure that the way we see progress is more human centered.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's essential, and making sure that all the different aspects that affects an individual's well-being and trajectory is addressed. And I just want to add a little more context as to this perspective. Um,
Yes.
when I was in grad school, I worked with a wonderful organization called the Ed Redesign Lab. And at Ed Redesign, I learned about this national movement called Cradle to Career or Cradle to Career initiatives.
Okay.
And what Cradle to Career initiatives do is that in specific places across the country, many communities are getting together to understand how it is that we can support individuals from cradle, meaning from the time that they're infants, all the way
Mm-hmm.
until they're adults and in their career. And a lot of times people think that, oh, we just need high quality education for folks to succeed from cradle to
Right.
career, but
Mm-hmm.
instead you need comprehensive supports. That's really what you need. You need to make sure that all the needs are being met,
Mm-hmm.
almost at a personalized level, for individuals to break out of cycles of intergenerational poverty and intergenerational lack of access to opportunity. So, I'm very
Truly.
grateful for Ed Redesign for helping me build that perspective. But yeah, essentially, I just think that progress needs to be redefined so that it becomes human centered and so that the approaches are multifaceted. That's really what I think should be done. And what sucks is that I, as an individual, have limited power to make these systemic changes. I think this
Yeah.
needs to
It
happen.
requires everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So this needs to happen in concert with key players in our community. I think the local government,
Mm-hmm.
school districts, health organizations, nonprofit organizations, and private businesses need to align along a shared vision of how they want to help the community through comprehensive supports. And there's some of that work already happening from
Of
what I've
course.
researched myself. But it's not the bulk of the conversation. So my goal is to just go to spaces with leaders in the room and
Mm-hmm.
help build that awareness and
Yeah.
drive that discussion as to how we can develop projects and programs that meet people where they're at and help them succeed all the way through from infancy through adulthood.
That is important. And it is going to take, it's going to take investment, and one thing that your fact sheet that you, again, you got this from the quality of life, a quality of life, informational from the El Paso Community Foundation. And then also, and I don't know which one you got this from, but it, I, it said something about the El Paso GDP being like $4 billion. Was it an annual? Was it 4 billion
Mhm.
last year? Was it
I
last
think it's
or?
46 billion, perhaps.
Oh shoot! Now look at me, way undershooting. 46 billion for this region.
I believe so.
Can
I
you?
may be wrong.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
That's okay. You know what? We'll look that up. But we know it's billions, okay? And for someone like me, even 1 billion is a lot. But I know
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
if
it's
you
like
want to if
48 billion, by the way. I just googled it. Yeah.
and that was from last year.
Mhm. Pretty much.
Okay. For people like me who don't understand what GDP means, can you help us understand it a little bit? Because I mean,
Sure.
to me, okay. So I'm going to tell you my assumption, and the reason, another reason I'm having this conversation and that I have these conversations is I'm not going to be. I want to encourage people to not feel stupid asking questions. I'm not a financial person. It's why I'm not rich yet. But the more I learn, the better I do. You know what I'm saying? The more I learn these things, the more educated I get, the better decisions I make. So
Mhm.
no, I've heard the term GDP. I know it means gross domestic product. Sounds great. I don't exactly know what that means to El Paso for last year being 48 billion or 46 billion or however much you said. And perhaps
Mhm.
that could really help somebody. Can you explain what that means, sir?
Sure. And just to be clear, I don't have a degree in economics. I have taken a bunch of economics classes, and I have worked in finance. So I'll tell you my perspective of what GDP essentially means. As you said,
Okay.
it's gross domestic product, and it's an economic measure that essentially tries to assess the level of value creation that an economy is creating. So GDP can measure economic output or economic production coming out of the city or coming out of the state or coming out of a country. And there's a lot of different things that make up GDP. For
Okay.
example, consumption from individuals, investments, and then also uh, production from businesses. So you look at private businesses, you see how much value they're creating in terms of how much they're selling to people, and you're
Okay.
also taking a look at um, just value that is created in monetary terms through a lot of different actors, whether it's also the public sector, the jobs that they create and they give to the community, and also the things that they build in the city. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that is being built, anything that is being sold, anything that is creating opportunities for money to flow in our
Okay.
economy, and
Currency.
yeah, essentially. So anytime there's transactions taking place
Mm-hmm.
that
Okay.
create value, economically speaking, like in monetary terms, that's what
Yes.
builds the economy, right? And
Okay.
there's many pieces that build our local economy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's essentially how I see GDP.
Okay, and that helps. That helps. So yeah, so it's basically, it's things that are it's everything being bought and sold here. Almost, just like a kind of a very general way of the amount that has, like you said, traded, the amount that has flown, that has circulated, the amount of money
Hmm.
maybe that has circulated in. And is that the number that you're speaking of, is that fully El Paso County or just the city of El Paso, or is it this region? Or
I believe it's the region, or
okay. Okay.
actually, well, this GDP data that I saw comes from the city of El Paso's data set. So I believe it's the city's GDP, unless they said it's the regions.
Okay. And we'll that'll be up to us, people. That'll be up to the listeners to do your due diligence, because Miguel has gotten this information that has been compiled by our own city of economic development, and it's up to us to do the deep research. But I wanted I want to thank you for allowing me to kind of bring that to light, because I think that, first of all, with everything going on in the world, it's easy for people, and just like you said, according to some of those same studies and that same data that you that you presented to us at the Leadership Network, many people do not engage. And it's easy to look around, to watch the news, to see everything going on, and to feel like what nothing like there's no money being like there's no money, all the money's gone, there's no money being made, the federal government's using it all. But El Paso's got a lot of money moving through it. I mean, like 46 billion is no small potatoes, and not in my opinion. That being said, I think, and I'm going to say something extremely controversial, and this is my thoughts on this. This is only reflective of my experience and my thoughts, and I'm just going to keep it 1,000 because, again, I think we need to have real conversations. Our small businesses, our local businesses, especially, we have got to do a better job of taking care of our employees. People are not taking care of the employees, whether it's the what, and not only, okay, and I'm going to say something else very controversial. Not just employees, but contractors, vendors. This city and the people, I mean, I am flabbergasted at the amount of people and the level of people that want to get stuff for free or at a heavy discount, or not pay their people, or not pay their vendors, or not pay for talent. Even as an artist, I see that a lot. People want volunteers for everything. And I'm not talking about nonprofits. Of course, if you're a nonprofit, of course, like you run off of volunteers and donations, you're doing great work or whatever. But for-profit organizations, for businesses that are not paying their employees on time, I know there's a lot of companies that do that. I've experienced it personally, and I've seen it happen. And I've only been back, Miguel, I've only been back in El Paso because I came back, but I came back in 2019. When I came back, I had transferred into PF Chang's because that's where I had been working before. But I came back here to reconnect with my mom and to get my life together because I had like an early midlife crisis, just keeping it real. And and so I came back for that reason. But I started working at PF Chang's, which is a corporate, kind of restaurant. So I didn't experience that, any type of financial, like any type of payment issues. In fact, their structure of running business was fantastic. You know what I mean? To be honest, so I had no problem. The only reason I left there was because COVID happened and everything got shut down. And then I just didn't go back there, but I ended up going to work at a series of locally owned businesses since then. Locally owned businesses, restaurant. And I hear this in every single sector of business, from every level of person that you can think of, all the way up to elected officials. I'm just keeping it 1,000, okay? And I don't mean to bring you into this conversation because we haven't talked about this, but I'm just saying these are systemic issues. How can you have the trust of people when this is how you're treating your employees, and then not only that's happening, but then have the audacity to position yourself and your organization as some foundational, superpower, and then this is how you're acting behind the scenes. I'm just saying that is, we were talking about how we need to have these conversations of how we're going to strengthen and fortify and be equitable for everyone. It has to start at several levels. And, if people are going to employ vendors, or they're going to have all these situations and they're going to want to bring all these vendors into it. Okay, that's one thing. You need to make sure you pay them and pay them equitably. Like, these people have money too. I'm not talking about people that don't have money and influence, so that's one thing. And who does that hurt? That hurts the everyday El Pasoan. that hurts the, that hurts the person you're talking about who's trying to feed their kids and trying to make sure that their children have a great education. But if they're doing work on the promise of some, oh, you're going to get exposure, like, don't do that. Like, you're rich, you're dry, you know what I mean? Help, like, pay people right so that you can keep doing this, so we can all grow and we can all earn. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I think we have a communication issue among, throughout organizations. And as far as there's a lot of silos, like you were talking about, in all the different areas that, like, we spoke of. There's people operating in silos, and then there's challenges with communication on what you're saying, on how are we going to make this equitable for everyone, and how, and
Mm-hmm.
then the follow through on that. You having been back for just 8 months, is that something that you've seen? And I'm not asking you to, like, talk about anything in particular, but I just wonder, A, is that something that you've seen? And B, is that the type of problem that the El Paso Leadership Network is looking to solve, Miguel?
Yeah. Well, thank you for highlighting, the issues that you have noticed as well when it comes to local businesses. I think this is just important for me to keep in mind, especially because El Paso Leadership Network was selected by the city of El Paso as an entrepreneurial support organization through their Business One Stop Shop network. So, actually, tomorrow I'm going to an event where I'm going to meet a lot of different nonprofits who have been designated as entrepreneurial support organizations. And we're going to talk about how, as nonprofits and organizations, we can better support the business landscape. Um,
Wonderful.
and something interesting to note is that when it comes to local businesses and the value that they create in our community, more than 50% of local businesses are small businesses. Um, and I think that's very important to keep in mind because small businesses don't have the same access to capital and resources and knowledge that's necessary in order to succeed. So you mentioned, for example, PF Chang's. We could compare that to a small mom and pop restaurant um, who is trying to succeed in our local economy. And PF Chang's has the systems in place,
That's right.
has access to their capital, they know how to do things, so they're not going to have any problem paying their employees. Uh,
That's right.
but at the same time, small businesses, they are sometimes struggling to pay the lease on the rent for whatever space that they use for the restaurant. They have to pay their employees, they have to make sure that operations are paid. And the thing is that small businesses work with a small level of capacity. They don't have the same capacity as a corporation that has years of existence. So I think it's essential to build that capacity for small businesses to become resilient and to
Agreed.
have the knowledge and the tools to ensure that they're doing the right things, that they're not overextending themselves, that whenever they hire someone, they have the money to pay them and they pay them according to whatever agreement that they came to, because uh, I don't think that small businesses maliciously don't pay their employees. A lot of times they're just in difficult positions and they don't have the money to pay. Or they're just trying to figure out how to do it in the best way possible. So I just
I
think
ag-
it's essential. I
I
just think it's
agree. I was just
essential. Hmm.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say, I agree. I absolutely agree. And, because you're coming to this conversation with nonprofits, I it's important to also look at it from a lens of the, sometimes sometimes more capital is not what they actually need. They need more, or they need more leadership training to be 1000%. I mean, and this is me on, this is someone who's worked on the front lines of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in these businesses here. And I'm talking about, like I said, across sectors. You know, I'm not even talking about just restaurants. I'm not even talking about blah, blah, blah. But because when you see the owners and founders in their big houses and their big cars and everything like that, but they're not, you know. And I'm bringing this to you because as a leader who's going to be actually supporting, you know, these companies, the this should definitely be talked about, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing when you're in the trenches with, like, I think for instance, Mayor Renard Johnson, he talks about when he was coming up as an entrepreneur and there were times that he didn't know how he was going to pay. You know, he's sleeping in the warehouse with the employees. That's a different type of energy than your bosses are rolling around in, you know, like top line
Yeah.
cars, and they're, you know, and I, again, I'm here to have uncomfortable conversations, because if
Oh,
we're going to solve some of these,
that's cool.
if we're going to solve
Yeah.
some of these problems, we need to, you know what I'm saying? We need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, they're, you know, but, maybe their employees don't know how their kids are going to eat that night. Like
Mm-hmm.
and to your point, I don't think it's malicious, but I do think it is negligent. But I also believe that there has to be a way that we can invite these small businesses in, you know, because there's another thing. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride in asking for help when you are showcasing your success.
Mm.
So how are we gonna, you know? So that's, I just want to bring that because I feel like
Yeah.
you have that ability to bring that to, you know, the table, because that is why we're seeing a lot of businesses shut down. Like there's a certain pride now for the companies that want to do those things and want to take advantage of those resources. How can we get the message to them that there are people, there are going to be organizations like yours that can help them to be better leaders, and to, and I think that's a root. So that's why I'm happy to be talking to you, because
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can encourage some of these business owners to see themselves as leaders in their own business, and not just running a business, or not just trying to be flashy, but hey, you actually have something incredible. You're actually an incredibly talented person. You actually, you know, it's not for lack of being able to bring business in, or even to get leads, but if you can nurture a culture where you are delivering service at a high level, you actually could grow. You know what I mean? You actually, and you have something unique that the sky's the limit to how big you can grow, but you can't
Mm.
look at this as just a job that you're running, because that's
Yeah.
where it kind of gets, that's where I think it gets kind of diluted. And honestly, Miguel, I think that I also give El Paso and El Paso business owners a lot of grace too, because we've been through a lot. You know, we went through the shooting, you know, that happened, and that was traumatizing. And then right after that, we were the epicenter for COVID for that amount of time, and they were having to put body bags on, you know, on refrigerated trucks. My uncle died here during that died from COVID, and so it was a very, you know, and when he got sick, they had to take him to an urgent care because the emergency rooms were full. So I know it was real, no matter what anybody else wants to say. I know personally that it was a very real and scary time for El Paso. So I think that maybe there's some fatigue there too. But I love everything you're talking about, because I believe that to be true too. Because to your point, to bring it back to the cradle to, you know, to career pipeline, when you're not, when you're so talented that you become successful and you can create something, but you don't have the right mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your
Yeah.
mindset's not rooted in that, in how to build your wealth with integrity and how to sustain it and how to allow, how to make investments that will continue to grow that, then that's where we're seeing some of those failures too. So I think what
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're saying, the complete, I can't remember how you said it. You said the, how did you say that?
Comprehensive supports. Yeah.
The comprehensive support is real and is real necessary, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's a thread that you started, that I see that you're addressing, that I haven't seen anybody else address. So I completely commend you, and what you're doing with the El Paso Leadership Network makes me excited, because you're willing to look at the truth of the situation and say, let's not just have another empowerment conference. Let's actually start looking at these things and figure out where is the bottleneck, where's the
Mm-hmm.
breakdown in our communities, and how can we build that up. So I absolutely, you know,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I love that about what you're doing.
Thank you.
So that's exciting. What are do you are so tomorrow when you go to this event, are you just now, are you going to be are you, do you already have an idea of how directly that you are going to be supporting? Or are you going to kind of see, or is
Mm-hmm.
this tomorrow's kind of like your first meeting, or what do we got in store? Or what can, should people already be looking to come to you for specific support, or where are we at?
Well, tomorrow it's the first meeting with entrepreneurial support organizations. So we're just getting to know each other and thinking about ways through which we can collaborate in order to support local businesses and local entrepreneurs. And I appreciate how you are giving me all this context about your experiences dealing with small businesses, and just businesses in general here in El Paso, because it's important to keep in mind what are the limitations that we currently have in our economy, which are not just enabling small businesses to succeed, but also the vendors and the contractors and the employees that support those small businesses. And like I said, I think this comes down to a couple of ways in which we can support businesses. One is building capacity for them to have access to capital and resources. Uh,
Okay.
Another is also having the education, or providing educational programs for entrepreneurs to know best practices as to how to use these resources. So, for example, financial literacy education, I think, is essential for business owners so that they know how to manage their own capital and their own money, so that they can sustain their businesses and also be able to pay their employees. So, capacity building, education is important. A third level, I think, is just accountability among business owners. I think is essential. And I think one way in which you can build that accountability is one through like leadership development, as you mentioned. But another is also by simply just leveraging our legal system. You know, if, for example, a business draws a contract with a contractor or a vendor and they don't honor it under the statutes of the contract, I think that vendors and contractors should be empowered to hold these business owners accountable
I do
through
too.
legal action if necessary too. You know, like people can't just get away with not paying people, you know. So like if you as a contractor are not getting paid by the deadline that is articulated in your contract, you can take legal action against whoever you provided services to, you know. And people need to realize that there's consequences for not uh, living up to your commitments, you know. So, you know, you can give people all the resources and education that they need, but
Yeah,
if at the end of the day they're not honoring their word, they do need to be held accountable, if
truly.
necessary, through the legal system, by individuals, you know, getting legal counsel and perhaps even pressing charges. At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
people got to get their money, and if you don't meet them where they're at, especially after you agree to something and you signed a dotted line, then you do need to be held accountable in some way, shape, or form. Um,
Agree.
so so all these different pieces I think need to be considered when when I have these conversations tomorrow with other entrepreneurial support organizations. How are we going to build capacity? How are we going to educate entrepreneurs? How are we going to bolster leadership development? And how are we going to hold folks accountable just so that there is no foul play happening in our economy? So and there's even more pieces to consider on
Of
top of that.
course.
So one way in which I can see El Paso Leadership Network supporting the local economic ecosystem and local entrepreneurs is by developing educational programs. I think
Mm.
one capacity that we have is developing online courses. We are currently developing an online course for civic engagement,
Oh, that's
collaborating with
great.
UTEP and Raise Your Hand Texas that we're planning to publish this year. But another thing that El Paso Leadership Network could do is develop a course on, say, financial literacy or leadership development for entrepreneurs. That's one way
Yes.
in which I think I can help support the ecosystem. But beyond what I can do and what El Paso Leadership Network can do, I think something that is really important is that nonprofits need to start working together more intentionally to develop programs through partnerships that help support the community. Earlier, you mentioned that a lot of organizations work in silos. Everyone is doing their own program. Everyone wants to, take charge of their own little
Mm-hmm.
section of the market. But I seldom see organizations publicly doing collaborations around a certain event or a certain program. And it happens. I'm not saying it's
Right.
non-existent. I mean, just last year, an organization that supports entrepreneurs, which is Pioneers 21, collaborated with the Medical Center for the Americas Foundation to apply for a grant worth more than $50,000 to help support local entrepreneurs. And so, like, that's one example of
Yeah, I love them
collaboration.
both, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing
Yeah.
great things in our city, and that's a public collaboration between two organizations. They leveraged their shared capacities to get
Beautiful.
access to capital so that
Yes.
they can then use to help local entrepreneurs. And I just think there's much potential for other organizations
Same.
to start collaborating like that.
Yeah.
Um, but it needs to be purposeful and it needs to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I would love to bring up tomorrow. Like how can we build something together, across nonprofits to
Mm-hmm.
uh, create programs that help El Pasoans. And there's different ways to do it. Like Pioneers 21 and the MCA gave us an example that if
Mm-hmm.
we come together through a partnership and we apply to a grant and we clearly articulate what we want to do with our shared capacities, we just build a strong case for the government or for foundations to give us a shot by giving us a grant worth thousands of dollars, and then with that grant then build something that is meaningful and hits on those different aspects that we mentioned, whether it's access to capital, educational development, leadership development, or
Mm-hmm.
accountability systems. So I just think working together purposefully can really make an impact. And I think that leaders of nonprofit organizations and leaders in government, leaders in private businesses need to start looking for those opportunities to collaborate with others and
Agreed.
leverage partnerships to gain access to capital and opportunities, which can then be translated to helping entrepreneurs and helping local businesses and meeting them where they're at.
I love that. That is such an opportunity. I completely agree. And I look forward to seeing all. I'm first of all, I'm glad that you're back here in El Paso, Miguel, and I love the work you're doing already. And so
Thank you.
super, I'm so glad that I went to that. And just to be real quick, because I know we're about to wrap up, but I just want to let you know the impact of what you have done already. So you've created that event. I ended up sitting next to Commissioner Jackie Butler, who was on your panel. And I never had even heard of her before, just to be honest, because again, I'm learning, I'm new. That's why I've created Five Star Conversations, because I want everyone to feel like it doesn't matter if you're 44 years old like me and you've never been engaged in politics. Guess what? Now's a great time to start. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something you had to have already been a part. It doesn't matter how old you are, it's your right and your responsibility to be engaged. And to the point of the numbers that you gave, like there's not enough people engaged. So we have every right to know who our elected officials are. We should be voting for
Mhm.
them. But unfortunately, not many percentage of our community is voting. But that's something I do want to affect change in, that we should all be participating in all of these conversations, right? And again, so you brought me awareness to say, and she is the commissioner for my precinct, which was even more
Mm.
perfect because I'm like, great. Again, I didn't even know that I didn't know this office even existed. And I'm willing to look stupid to make other people realize that you don't have to have understood all this to start getting involved. That's the reason that I'm just being real about it. Okay. And so we ended up having a conversation when they were did the civic panel, and Elisa was talking about her engagement, but launched, and she was talking about how she worked with the senator who helped get the business license of some big business here revoked because they were poisoning the water and the
Mm.
people. She said that took
Mhm.
about 10 years. And I ended up asking a question saying, hey, well, I'm so glad you brought that up. And that's awesome that you did that. And so I posed the question to the civic engagement panel. Hey, um, you know, since it took them 10 years to get this reversed, and who knows how long that business was even here before they even started that process. And so I said, well, we have these AI data centers coming up. What are we going to do about that? And that was when Commissioner Butler said that she was bringing a best practices guide, concept to the commissioner's court and to the city. And I said, great, that's perfect. I was thinking about that. And it turned out she was sitting right next to me throughout the whole event. So it was just like divine alignment. Anyways,
Mhm.
that turned out that next Monday, she was bringing that to the commissioner's court. So we had exchanged information, and she emailed me that Friday, told me that they were doing the commissioner's court on Monday. So I went to the
Yeah.
commissioner's court and I spoke there, and was
Um.
able, because she brought that up, and so they unanimously passed that they wanted to go forward with this guide. And um and we had someone from New Mexico. I had like made a couple of Instagram and posts about the commissioner's court uh
Mhm.
meeting, that where she was going to address this on Monday. And even somebody from New Mexico came on. They zoomed in, and were talking about their experience over there and bringing it to this region. And so we had just a really very robust regional conversation about that. And if it wasn't for your event, I wouldn't have been there. That person wouldn't have been there. And there were only maybe three or four people there were only three, I want to say three people that spoke, three to four people that spoke, or just a few that spoke on the data, the AI data center. And several of them were directly there because of the event that you created. So I wanted to thank you
That's
for
awesome.
that, and for connecting me with Commissioner Jackie Butler, whom I would have, I'm sure I would have eventually known her, but your event really brought that together. And so I want to say that everything that you're doing matters, and it matters for us to get out there and be together and be engaged. So just wanted to highlight that for everyone, and to let everyone know that El Paso Leadership Network is doing important work, and it's working one
Oh,
step
thank
at a
you so
time.
much for sharing that, Michelle. And yeah, it's awesome to hear how, beyond the event, you were able to start exercising your own leadership. So I appreciate that energy that you bring to the table. We need people like you who show up to spaces, and they follow up, and they show up to other spaces to make their voice known. I think it's so important to elevate people's voices, because people have opinions, and they just need to be empowered to realize that they can share their thoughts, and even if we don't have all the answers, like, I think it's just important to have discussions and to talk about the issues, and see how we can support each other. So looking forward to seeing you again at another event that El Paso Leadership Network hosts. So let's definitely stay in touch, and again, really appreciate the conversation today, and all your questions. And uh, I think it's a educational opportunity for myself as well, to think critically about how I'm approaching problems and the impact that I want to create. So I think you have a great platform here, and yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And so, lastly, before everybody leaves, just let everybody know what is the best way for people to follow you and to get involved with the El Paso Leadership Network. Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can follow El Paso Leadership Network on Instagram at EPL Network. You can also find us on LinkedIn uh, under El Paso Leadership Network. Same for Facebook. And yeah, if you go to our website, www.elpasoln.org. You can also sign up to receive newsletters from us, so you can stay tuned with any programming that we develop this year and in the coming years. So, looking forward to hear from people. You can also add me on LinkedIn under Miguel Moya. Happy to have discussions with people. I'm always open to setting up Zooms or coffee chats, just so we can talk about issues in El Paso and how we can solve these problems. So I welcome any kind of outreach. And yeah, thanks so much for letting me share that.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. And thank you for this conversation and for the work that you're doing to strengthen our community at its foundation. I see it in action, and I am participating, and I'm right there with you. What really stands out is the reminder that education isn't just about academics. It's all throughout the system. That's what we've been talking about. And it's about dignity, opportunity, and preparing people to lead with purpose. I really believe that that's what the El Paso Leadership Network is doing. And again, I've been a recipient and seen how that's already rippled out in just a little way. So I'm excited to see how much further that it goes. So for
Awesome.
anyone watching or listening, you're welcome. Let this be a reminder that leadership doesn't start with the title. It starts with showing up, believing in people, and committing to the long view, and to getting involved and engaged with other people like Miguel and the El Paso Leadership Network. So, Miguel, thank you so much for being here. And this conversation is part of Five Star Conversations in the Sun City, where we spotlight the people shaping health, healing, leadership, and connection across the borderland. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Five Star Conversation.
Thank you.